The Democrats are sweating bullets again. Joe Biden is getting crushed by an avalanche of terrible, no-good polling. Brand new surveys showing President Biden is trailing former President Trump, including a Fox News poll that has President Biden down by 2 points nationally. And the New York Times has Trump leading Biden 48 to 43%. The Times is also pointing out how a majority of Biden's 2020 voters simply say he's too old to be effective. And here's the kicker. The president is winning only 83% of his 2020 voters, with 10% of them going to Trump. But Joe's defenders are in the media and putting out a brave face and trying to cheer Biden up.
Democrats, I think when it comes to messaging, we're at our worst when we try and, speak to the head and we try and get all cerebral.
Listen, I think the president is an incredibly compelling figure.
To give President Biden some credit, he's done remarkable progress on the economy. The economy is objectively doing better on most macro measures, the stock market, unemployment.
This is a president that has done more in his 3 years as president than most presidents have done in their 2 terms.
You look at Joe Biden, he exercises every day. You look how fit and trim.
Despite the drubbing, Biden remains defiant, saying in a new interview, quote, "I'll beat him again." But you know things are bad for the big guy when SNL is finally mocking Democrats over their ridiculous defense of Biden's age.
I was just with him, and behind closed doors, Joe is incredible.
Hello, Dana. Pleasure to be with you to talk about the most vigorous man I've ever known, Joe Biden. I was just with him, and behind closed doors, he's a whirlwind.
Man, I am exhausted. I was with Joe Biden for the past weekend, and whew, he wiped me out. And behind closed doors, he's a dynamo.
All right, Jessica, 4 polls, New York Times, Fox, Wall Street Journal, CBS, they all have Biden losing. You think he's still the best candidate for 2024 for the Dems?
I think that this reflects the kind of 2-week streak of talking about this since Ezra Klein's piece and then people coming out and pushing back against that. I think it's really complicated, and I think that there is a risk that you are taking, as he laid out in the big New Yorker profile that came out today, of putting someone in who is untested. And so Democrats are in a bind about it. And there are people who are deeply concerned. And there are people who truly believe he did it before, he'll do it again, and people will come home. There were a few things, though, in the polls that stuck out to me as just kind of mind-bending. So in the Dobbs era, the New York Times Siena poll had him tied with women with Trump at 46. So Biden won 57% of women in 2020 before Roe v. Wade was taken away and before we've had 7 or 8 referendums on reproductive choice and before women have become, again, the angriest coalition of voters. And now suddenly they're tied. That makes no sense to me. I know that Donald Trump released gold sneakers and he's been indicted, so he thinks that black people like him more now. But do you really think that he's going to get 20% plus of the black votes? Completely upends electoral history. The Hispanic vote in the New York Times Siena poll, so only 3% of their interviews were done in Spanish, when about 20% of the Latino electorate is only Spanish speaking. So that seems like it's not particularly representative. And then the Gen Z vote, again, this idea that Donald Trump is appealing to a generation that cares about the things that he cares about the least on the planet, like reproductive choice, climate change, gun safety. And then just a Dean Phillips moment. Dean Phillips even tweeted this. He was getting 12% representation in one of the polls. He said, only 5% know who I am, and he gets about a percentage point in all of these caucuses. Something is a bit funky. It does not mean there isn't a problem. If the election were held today, Donald Trump could very well win. But you look at this and you think women, the black vote, the Latino vote, the youth vote, while Trump is trumping all over.
Maybe look at them as Americans who just want to live a happy life and get a job and afford a house, instead of thinking about them as in little groups. Like, oh, I can't believe that. Like, people actually, regardless of group, want the same things.
Okay.
Yeah, they do, but
and
only one
Dana, I want to give Dana
a
chance to get in here. Dana, Trump's advantage is coming, as Jessica just indicated, from groups that they have predicted belong to the Democrats, and that is the Hispanics, the young people, suburban women, blacks. And I felt all along, by the way, that Joe Biden earned those low numbers. Yeah. But this is a new constituency. And like Greg, I believe it's just people who want what Trump is selling.
Let me just add blue-collar workers to that. And in the New York Times poll, when Nate Cohn wrote about it, one of the last things he says in his piece is the Democrats might have to go back to the drawing board and rethink their entire coalition. Meaning that's basically like scrap everything, start over. In that poll as well, they asked Democratic primary voters a question you just asked, Jessica. Should Joe Biden be the Democratic nominee? Only 46% of them said that he should. And then in that New Yorker piece, I thought it was interesting that, one, the interview takes place on January 17th, and it's only coming out now. He makes no news for 2 months, and then the guy comes out and says, oh yeah, the president was great. He was perfectly, corpus mentis, everything was fine. But he asked Joe Biden, did you ever think of not running? And he says, absolutely not. Like, oh really? Well, that'd be news to all of those Democratic voters who said he will be a transformational president. They took that as a one-term situation. Also, I think that they have to just continue to keep him in the Oval Office so that he stops painting himself into corners. He's painted himself into a corner on immigration, energy, crime, inflation, and on his vice presidential choice. So that's why the reason SNL and Jon Stewart are finally ridiculing all of them is because they can't show what they're saying. Joe Biden is a whirlwind, only behind the scenes. Come on.
All right. And Jesse, one of the interesting things is that, Trump is beating Biden by huge numbers in immigration. And the State of the Union is coming up. And do you expect that Biden is going to switch gears now to say, I'm going to take care of the border now?
I don't know what Biden is going to do. He can't do anything that's going to change this. Jessica just named every single group in the country.
No, not white men.
I can't believe
evil white
women,
men. She left out evil white men.
Hispanics,
white rural
blacks.
rage.
I mean, Jessica, by the time you're finished, that's everybody.
Everyone should support Joe Biden.
Okay.
Yes, I stand by
Jessica, you are a poll denier. You remind me of myself.
Is that a new category?
Years ago, I used to go through the polls. I couldn't believe them. You just did what I did. And so I'm here for you. If you need anything, this is what happens. Now the Democrats are saying that he should just scare people into voting against Trump. They should run on the economy. And they should say he's too old, or he should lean into the wisdom, or he's actually really young. Latest thing I saw in this New Yorker piece, they said they're going to close on January 6th. That's their closing message, is democracy in January 6th. That means in October and November, Joe Biden's closing argument is going to be January 6th.
Right.
That is crazy, Jessica. That is absolutely nuts. And the worst thing about this, if you're a Democrat, 10% of people that voted for Joe Biden in 2020, they're not just going to not vote for Joe Biden. They're switching. That means 8 million you take off of the tally for Joe Biden and you add that to Donald Trump. I mean, that is just an enormous
Do we still get all the
swing.
dead people?
You not as many as this year because we're on to it.
Okay.
Jessica, you haven't been ahead in a poll since Halloween. This is not an outlier. You guys are in real trouble.
Greg, one of the things that is so amazing to me, and I have a lot of trouble with, is listening to all of these people who come out and say, no, Joe was great. He's terrific behind closed doors. I mean, do they believe that stuff, or are they just convinced that we're suckers and stupid?
I think they're the mediocrity of the party. I think the people that are pushing this bad news, they're the smart ones, because I am not going to fall for this.
Right.
I'm not falling for this bad news, okay? I would advise Republicans not to rest on their pudgy laurels. I think we're putting too much confidence in misleading equations in early polls. Like, for example, let me address the Republican side of this, because we're talking about the Democrats. I think the Republicans have to focus on something that they don't want to talk about. Trump trounces Haley. Haley trounces Biden. So if B is greater than C and A is greater than B, then A is greater than C. But we're not counting the future coalition of anti-Trumpers, especially when the media gets their weight behind them. You have to think that that's going to grow. So it's the only advice I would ever give to Trump, and that is to honestly take an inventory of the things that alienate people on the fence and do less of that. I don't know what it is. You got the diehards, right? You got a huge millions and millions of diehards, but see what's pushing other people towards you and what's pushing people away, and figure out, it might just be tiny little tweaks. For example, like, The things that are pushing people toward him are the issues and policies of the Biden administration. So sit back and watch the chaos do the work for you. It speaks for itself. You may not have to add anything, and then play up the positivity of a new dawn, a new beginning, getting back to a country that is united. The actual message that Biden that lied to us, you provide the real thing. That's what I would think, because I think that that's something I feel like there should be a Trump blowout. Given all of these numbers, that's why I don't trust it.
Well, I think you should trust it, just because Republicans are always so beaten down and demoralized into thinking that you're a minority in this country. And you see a poll like this with these demographics that Jessica just laid out: women, Hispanics, blacks. People agree with the policies that Donald Trump pushes in the platform. And that should make all Republicans and all Americans happy, because they were successful.
Remember your midterms. You nearly cried.
Up next, the former Border Patrol chief just exposed Joe and Kamala's stunning dereliction of duty at the border.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.